بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد نورك الساري والمددك الجاري واجمعني به في كل أطوار وعلى آله وصحبه يا نور Alhamdulillah. So we've reached the top of page 28 of this book, page 28 for those who are following, looking at this aspect of da'wah, more specifically looking at how we can represent the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, how we can be representatives or deputies for the Prophet ﷺ himself. And just this term, niyaba, it's interesting. It has like a martial element, no doubt, as the religion itself has a martial element. But the religion of Islam is about discipline, it's about focus, and it's about routine, regularity of actions. Like we know the best of actions are what? Adwa mahawain qal. They are regular even if they are small. So regularity, consistency, discipline, focus, all of these are bedrocks of the Islamic way, of the Muhammadan way. So this link, this is why our teacher Habib Umar al-Hafiz, he said this way of religion and this way of calling people to Islam and this way of spiritual purity and this way of knowledge, all different aspects of Islam, he said all of it comes down to two key elements. Two key elements are needed to propel forward, to move forward in the matter of religion. We need two key elements to become people who are successful, people who have achieved something religiously. The first one is what he calls jiddiyah. Jiddiyah is seriousness, having a sense of seriousness about this affair. And the second one is jundiyah. Jundiyah is having a martial aspect to you, being martial in nature, being like having a military mindset, we could say, in terms of your organization, in terms of your focus, your determination, your resolve, your ability to perform and do things within the world. This is why it's interesting when you go to some of these places like Dar al-Mustafa. One of the things you're seeing there is that people are really operating on very little sleep. And they're operating on sort of very little physical resources. And it's interesting, if you look at the army, it's the same thing. The army now, they train, or they always have trained people to be able to operate at the highest levels of very little sleep, of very little sustenance. So some of them now will say that some of the training now for like the SAS and these type of elite people, you know, the elite groups within the army, is like you have to go 7 days without sleep and still be able to operate. These types of ideas. So there has a much, and also the jiddi has a seriousness to it as well. This matter, he has a seriousness, and this is epitomized. This is encapsulated and understood entirely in the beautiful prophetic statement. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Abu Talib, he comes to him. Why does he come to him? Because he's now understood Abu Talib is under pressure. He's being told by the other leaders of Quraysh that tell your nephew to stop doing what he's doing. He's destroying our society. He's ruining our business prospects. He's ending this tradition of idolatry that we have. Tell him to stop. And if he stops, we'll give him money. If he stops, we'll give him power. We'll make him a king. If he stops, we'll give him whatever he desires and then some. And if he stops, we'll help him in any way whatsoever. We'll follow him, we'll support him, we will strengthen him, but tell him that he cannot continue with this message. Change the message to something else and we'll support him. And when he comes to Abu Talib comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he tells him this, and he tells him, and the Prophet ﷺ begins to weep. He begins to weep out of a recognition that maybe even Abu Talib is going to leave him. Maybe even his own uncle is going to stop supporting him because he's coming to him with this kind of talk. And then he says to him, he says, if they place the sun in my right hand, and if they place the moon in my left hand, I would never stop this message. I would never stop continuing to convey, to give this message. Even if they gave me the sun and the moon, like everything in the world, and then on what it contains, the entire creation is placed in my hands. All of it is given to me. I will not stop conveying this message until either I succeed or I die in the process. Either the word of Allah becomes uliya, either I succeed and I'm able to establish and spread truth on the face of the earth. Either that, or the alternative is I exhaust myself and I die in the process. But there's no third option. This is the epitome of seriousness. The epitome of seriousness are those people who are worshippers, avid, sincere worshippers by night, and they are servers, khudama, servers of humanity by day. They serve humanity and they give to people more than they give to their own selves. Yeah, that they prefer other people. Yeah, يُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. They prefer other people over their own selves, over their own needs and their own desires. وَلَوْ كَانُوا بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةً. Even if they're in need, even if they have dire need, they still prefer other people over their own needs, their own desires, their own whims, their own wants, their own wishes. So this is what we mean by niyaba. The people of niyaba are those who have preferred, and they have preferred a path as higher, and they've preferred others people's needs, other people's desires, and other people's wishes over their own wishes. These are the people of success. These are the people who have attained ranks with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these ranks are, inshallah ta'ala, what we seek. Yeah, but coming to these types of classes, coming to these types of gatherings, inshallah ta'ala, we seek these types of ranks. We seek to become representatives of the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he's talking, so he's saying, لذا أي وقت تريد أن تبلغ يكون لك حبل موصل للنبي. Yeah, that whenever you seek to convey this message, you're actually extending out a rope. A rope is like being extended out and attaching you to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like we said yesterday, khidmah, service of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, service of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to serve humanity. In our context, because we can't physically serve the Afdal al-Khalq sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's not physically with us, so we serve him. We still have the opportunity. The doorway of service is open, but it's open through serving creation. Okay, so yakuna hablum mawsun lin-nabi wa babun, the doorway through which you enter. فَتُبَلِّغْ بَلَاغًا صَحِيحًا عَنْهُ وَإِنْ جَاءَ مَعَكَ عَقْلٌ أَوْ فِكْرٌ أَوْ نَفْسٌ فَهَذِهِ لَيْسَتْ بِأَبْوَابٍ تُدْخِلُكَ عَلَيْهِ وَلَيْسَتْ أَبْوَابٍ تُوصِلُكَ بِهِ إِذَا انقطعت النيابة حلت العلل في القلب والعلل في العمل. So he's saying here that we convey the prophetic message, not our message. We convey the message that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with. That's the message that we convey. We do not convey our message. What's our message? What our nafs wants, what our desires want, what our intellect thinks. I think this is the best way. What our fikr, our reflection, or I've arrived at this conclusion. No, we convey the message that was given by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Through him, like an example of this is we now have cultural filters. We have cultural norms by which we interpret life, by which we judge others, by which we look upon the world. All of that has to be rejected out of hand. It has to be rejected. The Prophet ﷺ was completely non-judgmental. Completely non-judgmental. He had no cultural affiliation in terms of accepting people into the religion, in terms of inviting people. And this we see, unfortunately, and it should sadden our hearts, we see this in every single aspect of our lives. I mean, look at the education of children. Like our teacher Sheikh Ibrahim many years ago, I remember once being in a class of the Makra Madrasa, and he was talking about handwriting. And he said that Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi was one of the great fuqaha, one of the great scholars of fuqaha. He's written an amazing tafsir as well. He was a great mufassir from Seville in Spain. Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, he says that the most important subject for a child to learn, number one, what's the most important thing that a child should learn from the beginning of the education we're talking about here, from the age of 5, 6, 7 onwards? The most important thing they should learn is handwriting. Handwriting, he said, is more important than the Quran. It's more important for them to learn how to write properly than it is for them to memorize the Quran. It's more important. So he says this, Ibn Khaldun brings this in his Muqaddimah also, and quoting Qadi Abu Bakr Ibn Arabi. But our teacher Sheikh Ibrahim said something interesting. He said, but, and he said, this is what Qadi Abu Bakr says, but people don't do this because they refuse to put the Prophet ﷺ's guidance, to put the Prophet's guidance ﷺ ahead of cultural norms, ahead of habits, ahead of what they think is the best according to the society around them. So the society is telling them the Quran has to be memorized. That's number one. They do that ahead of clear guidance from the Muhammad ﷺ. This is what we do in all. That's just an example, but we do that every single aspect. Our thoughts, our ideas, our reflections become more important. Our nufus, our whims, desires, caprice, that becomes what we are projecting. So when we're calling people to Islam, or when we're calling people to anything, we're actually calling them just to our own selves or our idea. This is my idea, this is what I think, and etc., etc. So what he's saying, he's negating that here. He says, if that is your da'wah, then you're not going to enter into anything. You're not going to enter into any prophetic pathway. You will not enter into the prophetic presence. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You won't enter into that presence. You won't enter into the presence of the Mustafa, of the Mujtaba, of the Mukhtar, of the one who was chosen above all of creation, the perfect one, the akmalu khalqillah wa ahsanu khalqillah wa ajmalu khalqillah, wa afdalu khalqillah, the most virtuous, perfect, beautiful, and excellent of God's creation. You won't enter into that particular way if you've decided that your thoughts and your whims and desires are better. So this is what he's making it very clear. So he says, this is not the doorway of arrival. You will not arrive at him through this. And this is a very, very important point. He says, once you have cut off niyaba, once you have cut off, and once you have decided to stop being a representative of the Prophet ﷺ, that you're no longer his deputy, that you are no longer following his example, what happens? The diseases of the heart, they become freed to wreak havoc. The deficiencies within your actions come back and become manifest and widespread. In other words, our purity and our reliance is entirely based on connecting to him. If you want to remove diseases of the heart, we want our deeds to be wholesome, accepted by Allah, then following him is the only way. Once we abandon being deputies to the Prophet ﷺ, then it's over. The diseases are back, the deficiencies are back, the problems are back. The success has ended. There is no success. Regardless of what people might perceive, this is istidraj. If people are having success, it's istidraj. Yeah, it's degrees that are taking you into destruction and delusion. Yeah, so this is what it is. So therefore, it's very different. Our criterion and our way of looking at things is very, very different. Okay, so we have this. Then he continues on this and says, فَلِهَذَا كَانَ مِنْ نِعْمَةِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى إِرْتِبَاطْ بِالسَّنَدِ وَرَبْطُ الْحِبَالِ. Yeah, and he says, from this, because of this, from amongst the greatest blessings that Allah has given us is an attachment to sanad, to a chain, yeah, and being connected to a rope. In other words, our desire is what? To be deputies of the Prophet ﷺ. How do we achieve this? To become deputies, to become representatives of the Prophet ﷺ in all dimensions of our life. Whether it's as parents, whether it's as teachers, whether it's as community activists, whether it's as guides, whether it's as nurturers, whatever dimension it is, whether it's within our personal relationships with our friends, with our parents, with our children, with our brothers and sisters, in all aspects, we desire to be deputies, representatives of the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of the peak of human perfection. We desire to represent him. If we desire that, then there's only one way to achieve it, and that is to be connected, to be attached to the sanad, attached to a chain that goes back to him. And what's interesting is this chain, don't misunderstand this. This chain is not about just sitting at the feet of the scholars. No, it's about taking from them. Like one of them has said that there's people, I remember just as we were leaving Tarim, I was with one of the Sayyids there, and he said to me, I said, you know, obviously we're leaving and there's going to be this distance. Physically, there's going to be a distance. He said, no, there's no distance. He said, there's people who have never entered Tarim. There's people who have never seen Tarim. There's people who have never heard of Tarim, who will be raised with Ahl al-Tarim. They will be raised with the people of Tarim. They'll be raised with Faqih al-Muqaddam and Sheikh Abdul Rahman al-Saqaf and Umar al-Mihdar and Abu Bakr al-Sakran and Aid al-Us al-Akbar and Imam al-Haddad and all of these giants. They will be raised with them and they don't even know what Tarim is. So what's the connection? The connection is a connection of meaning and understanding, yeah, and connecting to their way and their manhaj, their methodology, which is the methodology of the Prophet ﷺ, 100%. Yeah, it's their methodology, and it's about connecting to that methodology. That's what we talk about when we talk about sanad and when we talk about this rabit al-habl. And then he says, فَيُبَلِّغُ مُبَلِّغُ وَمَعْهُ رَابِطًا. Yeah, that he conveys and he has this attachment. وَمَعْهُ بَابًا, and with him is this doorway. وَمَعْهُ حَبْلًا, and with him is this rope. فَيَسْتَشْعُرُ هَذِهِ النِّيَابَةِ, and he understands, he brings to heart. He has a sense perception. Yeah, he perceives and he has a sense perception of this deputyship, of this custodianship of the prophetic way. He has this. يَسْتَشْعُرُهَا بِذَوْقٍ فَيَذَبُ عَنْهُ الْعُجَبُ وَالْغُرُورِ, that he experiences this with dhawq, with a spiritual tasting. He tastes this reality of being a deputy of the Prophet ﷺ. He tastes this reality. And when he tastes this reality, what happens? Ujab leaves him. Self-aggrandizement, being impressed with your own self, being pleased with your own self. This leaves that individual. He no longer is a person of ujab. He's not doing anything. So why is he impressed? That he recognizes that it's not him in control. Everything he's doing is from Allah. Allah is the one who's moving him. And it's through following the Prophet ﷺ that he's achieving success. His nafs has done nothing. His ego, his abilities have achieved nothing. Nothing. The only achievement that he's getting is through his connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his connection to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's it. There's nothing else. So therefore, why then would he have ujab? And ujab is the most dangerous of all of the spiritual diseases. The ulama, yeah, the ahlul qulub, the people of the heart, they talk about the ummahat, three spiritual diseases that are the root of all other disease. They talk about three. Some of them summarize it to one. Like Imam al-Junayd says heedlessness, one. But the majority of scholars, Ahlul Qulub, say three. They say hasad, envy. They say riya, ostentation, showing off, displaying your deeds to others, doing things to please others. And then the third one is ujab, which is being impressed with your own nafs. Being impressed with your own opinion. That's literally what the Prophet ﷺ says in the famous hadith, that the one who's impressed with his own opinion. And this is from the muhlikat. There's three muhlikat the Prophet ﷺ mentions, and he talks of hasad, riya, and ujab. These three. Now, ujab, of course, part of that is being arrogant. But arrogance is when you need someone else. Like, I'm better than him. That's arrogance. Ujab, you don't even need anyone else. You just like, look how amazing I am. Forget about the rest of them. I'm not really interested in that. Look how amazing I am. So it's more dangerous. Somebody could not be arrogant, but they can still be impressed with their own selves. Yeah. But this ujab leaves, it departs from us when we recognize that our strength comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our strength comes from connection to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and our strength comes from this sanad, from this attachment to meanings and to scholarship. This is where our strength comes from. So when we understand that, then why would we think we've done anything? Why would we place any kind of importance upon ourselves. Why? It doesn't make any sense. This is the point that we're making here. So he says that the one who does this, he becomes free of ujab wal ghurur. Ghurur is delusion. And delusion is actually even more subtle than ujab. It's even more subtle. Because if you look at Ihya Ulumuddin again, look at Ihya Ulumuddin, Imam Ghazali's masterpiece. You look at the way he's arranged that book. He talks about the muhlikat. In the third part of the book, he talks about the diseases of the heart. He talks about those things that destroy the heart. Hasad, envy, showing off, arrogance, all these things. The last thing he mentions, chapter 29, chapter 30, yeah, is ghurur. Yeah, the last thing that he mentions in the diseases of the heart is delusion. And what's that telling you? That's telling you that it's the most dangerous, the most difficult thing to remove. So delusion is a massive problem, and we have a full book in the Ihya that deals with this. Looks at the delusion of scholars. Scholars themselves can be deluded. Worshippers can be deluded. The laity, of course, normal people can be deluded. Yeah, and the biggest delusion for the vast majority of people, whether we call us to God, whether we're from the laity, whether we're family people, whoever we are, the biggest delusion, whether we're Muslim or non-Muslim, the biggest delusion across humanity is a lack of prioritization. Yeah, I would write that. Those people who are making notes, write that one down and underline it. Yeah, underline it, maybe put some glitter on it, highlight it, write it with gold ink if you've got gold ink. Yeah, the biggest problem, the biggest delusion that exists is a lack of prioritization. So we know, like for example, we know people who they have qada prayers to do. Yeah, they missed prayers in their life, that fard prayers. They don't make up any of that, but they'll spend an hour a day in dhikr. They spend 2 hours a day going to different dhikr gatherings, or they spend time learning knowledge about things that are tangential, not obligatory knowledge, extra things. Or they spend time going on work training courses. What's the point of going to a work training course when you aren't even fulfilling? Because the first thing you asked about is prayer. If you fail that test, it's over. There's no say, oh yeah, but I was good to my parents. Oh yeah, but I used to help out. It doesn't matter. It's over, it's gone. Yeah, the first thing is your prayer. So that's an example. And this is why, like we mentioned before, the corporation which is ruling the planet, the only reason they're ruling the planet is because they know how to prioritize, they know how to plan, and they know how to organize. And we used to know this as Muslims, as a collective body, as an entity. We used to be amazing at this. Look at the Ottomans. The Ottomans were known for administration above and beyond everything else, the administrative abilities. They mentioned now the French. Look at the French. The French enter Algeria, where Abdul Qadir al-Jazairi is there. Yeah, they entered, and Abdul Qadir al-Jazairi pushes them back for a period of time, and then the French take over again. When they take over, they enter into the administrative setup of Abdul Qadir al-Jazairi. What do? They're so impressed, they take his whole administration wholesale. They take all of it and they implement it within their country and within their systems. Because they recognize, look how organized he was. Yeah, this is from the secrets. Yeah, from the secrets of someone, Abdul Qadir al-Jazairi, who was a complete human being. In every department of life, he was a great scholar, Hafidul Quran, a great scholar of fiqh and the outer sciences. He was a great inner science, a master of the inner sciences. Yeah, a Qadri by Tariqa, one of the giants of spirituality of his time. He was a great warrior. He was a great administrator, a great leader, a great orator. In every department, he excelled. Yeah, and so you see this. Yeah, this organization prior to this is why they're planning ahead. And our failure to plan ahead, our failure to think ahead is what then leads to us lacking. Yeah, so this is what we're saying. So what happens here is this is the second delusion. The second biggest delusion is false hopes. What does that mean? What do you mean? I'm talking about what are false hopes? False hopes is to expect something with no effort. So for example, I'm making dua to Allah, oh Allah, Ya Allah, allow me to become better in my prayer. Allow me to become better in my worship. Allow me to become better in my remembrance. Yeah, I'm saying this, and then I take no means whatsoever. I take no means at all to improve. That's false hope. And that Imam al-Ghazali says in Bidayat al-Hidayah, he says the one who makes dua and then does nothing, doesn't take the means, is worshipping shaitan. He's actually worshipping the devil, because the devil, I will fill them with false hopes. This is the promise of the devil. Certainly, absolutely. There's two emphases there, the la and the noon of Tawqid. There's two emphases. Absolutely, absolutely, I will fill them with false hope. And false hope is this, is when you make dua and you don't make any effort. It's like the one who sat at home saying, oh, Allah, give me a job, and he's not even going to go to the job center. He's not going to go out and ask anybody. He's not going to go out and look for work. Exactly the same principle. That, and this is delusion. To think now that Allah is going to answer my prayer, to think now that you're going to achieve anything spiritually, but without doing anything. Yeah, this is it. So these type of delusions are the ones that need to be removed. This is what's going to allow us to ascend, inshallah, spiritually. So he talks about this, that the one who follows the Prophet ﷺ has removed himself from delusion. Yeah, that he is able to develop his heart such that he doesn't envy or doesn't hate others. Oh, that he turns to anything lowly. Yeah, like the deputy of the Prophet ﷺ, the one who is truly trying to emulate him, just trying, because we can't achieve perfection, but we certainly try. The one who's trying to emulate him, he will never turn, will never look to the lowly. He will never gaze upon the dunya with the eye of ta'zeem. He will never look upon the lowly, low things, things of passion and desire, empty things. He will never turn. This is the secret of the sir. The sir, the secret within the human being that's been deposited deep within the human heart. This secret is the one that should be focused on Allah. The one that should never turn away from Allah. This sir. So here he said the one who turns away, he's not a representative. Yeah, he needs to work on that focus, that eternal. And this really what it's really all about. Life is all about, is focus. Yeah, like Imam al-Haddad, he says, strive. He says you should strive to ensure your heart is cut off from everything other than Allah. That your heart has no attachments, no connections, no links to anything except Allah. Just Allah. And when that happens, then all of your other human relationships flourish. If you are serving your parents and loving your parents, and serving your children and loving your children, and serving your spouse and loving your spouse, and serving your brothers and sisters and loving your brothers and sisters, and serving your community and loving your community for Allah, that's when it flourishes. Otherwise, it will not flourish. It doesn't matter, like I have concern for my children. If it's not rooted in a concern for what Allah wants, then it won't flourish. Yeah, so really all of success comes about through that. So should we ask Allah for tawfiq to remove these veils from us? Yeah, this is what يستشعر how يترجمها في حسن أعماله بما يصلحها وينقيها عن الخلل. Yeah, that he's focusing on rectifying and purifying deficiencies and defects from his actions, inshallah. We ask Allah for tawfiq, inshallah ta'ala, as we move on through this blessed month of Rajab, inshallah ta'ala, that we're able to realize some of these realities. If there's any questions, inshallah, we can take questions through the chat, or people can unmute and ask as well. Salams. Okay. Okay, what are the three root diseases of the heart? So the three root diseases of the heart, the first one is envy, hasad, envy. Envy is when, what is the definition of envy? Envy is when you want a blessing to be removed. Yeah, you want a blessing that somebody else has, a blessing someone else has. You want that blessing to be removed. This is envy. You don't want him to have that blessing or her to have that blessing, number one. The second one is the riyah, ostentation or showing off. This is where you want to display your deeds before people. This is where you are acting for creation, not for Allah. Yeah, you are acting for creation, not for Allah. That's the second disease, where you're showing off, you're displaying your deeds before creation. The third disease is ujab. Ujab is this conceit, like being impressed with yourself, being pleased or like, yeah, impressed or happy with your own self. These are the three root diseases that all of the diseases come from. So the ulama say, if you can deal with those three, then you've dealt with all of them. And even those three, like we said, goes back to one, which is heedlessness. Being in a state of forgetfulness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, this is the root cause of everything. This is what leads to everything else. These three, if you look at these three diseases, interestingly, it's all about ni'mah. It all comes back. It all comes back to ni'mah. Yeah, and the way that we deal with blessings. We want blessings to be removed from other people. That's a problem. We want to display our blessings in front of people. That's a problem. We are impressed because of the blessings that Allah has given us, and we attribute those blessings to ourselves. That's a problem. Yeah, so all of this relates back to how we navigate with ni'mah. From Imran, well, here, if I'm not wrong, as a statement of Sayyidina Ali, which says that it's injustice to give a child a pen before the age of 7, as in it should be play-based learning. How do you understand the statement of Sayyidina Qadiyad about writing being the most important thing for the child to know first at the age of 500? Okay, that's a good question. So to be honest, not from 5 onwards. Yeah. So really, traditional education is from 7 onwards. So yeah, you're right, Afan. Yeah, there's no 5 onwards at all. Some say 6 onwards. Yeah, 6 onwards. So the sign of education, the sign that a child, what they call reading readiness. Reading readiness is when the first adult truth comes through. This is what the experts of education say, like this Sister Fatima Goyen, that people are, I'm sure, familiar with. She's one of the leading experts in sort of child development and education. She says when the first adult truth comes through, this is the time. When it comes to writing, especially with boys, writing should be done a lot later. Their skills of dexterity develop much later, and generally 7, sometimes even past 7, 7.5, 8 even. Yeah. But the point is that when that time comes, when they're ready for education, then it's writing is the most important thing. And to achieve excellence, itqan in writing is very important. That itqan in writing will form the basis of all learning. And beyond that, and it's more important than memorization of the Quran. So after it was Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi who mentioned that. That's the man Ibn Khaldun brings in his Muqaddimah. Okay, so question: If there's qada prayers to make, this is a very excellent question. This is probably one of the best questions we've had. If someone has qada prayers to make up, should they pray them in place of the sunnah muwakkidah of each prayer? If one had to choose between the two, so the opinion that we've taken from our teachers and many of the Syrian fuqaha mentioned this opinion is yes. Yes, they say that this is the Hanafi opinion. Allah Ta'ala, I know about the madhahib, but the Hanafi opinion is that if you have fara'id to do, that qada prayers to do, then you replace them with your sunnah muwakkidah as a means of facilitation. You can't do that. You can't do that. Now, there's also opinion that says that it's okay for you to continue praying your sunnah muwakkidah if you're still going to make up. What they say is you should be looking to make up at least a day's worth every day of qada prayers. Yeah? So from that point of view, if you're making a full day, i.e. your Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, your Fara'id, and then obviously your Witr. Yeah? Yes, yeah, with the exception of Fajr Sunnah, that's right. Yeah, they say the Fajr Sunnah is so important that you do that, and others also include the 2 after Maghrib as well. Some say the two after Maghrib we should never leave because these are ascensions unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the exception of the 2 before Fajr and the 2 after Maghrib, but everything else we replace. We substitute in our thing. This is what we took from. Like I said, this is not necessarily the only opinion of the Hanafi school. I'm sure there's other opinions. But this is what we took from the teachers, inshallah. Is there any other questions? Okay, جزاكم الله خير وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.